Well, hello and welcome to episode number 65 of PhotoKitchen. I'm your humble host, MD Welch, and today it's an old digital version. That's right, all the same great tasting content with half of me on the screen. And the reason why we're doing an old digital version is because I'm bringing you some tips and tricks for culling or editing your images in both Capture One and Adobe Lightroom Classic. Now, what does edit or culling actually mean? Well, it's taking those 500,000, 2,000 image shoots and weeding down to the best image or images to deliver to your clients or for your own portfolio needs. It's trimming the fat away, right? And I'm going to show you some techniques that are going to save you a lot of time, give you even more accuracy when you're doing this in both of these programs. I do want to say though that I have done some of this already in a previous video on Lightroom techniques, and I will include that in the description below. Make sure to check out that video because I'll kind of go over those things in Lightroom a little bit quicker and focus a little bit more on Capture One in certain areas. Now, since I'm declaring things, let's continue the declaration. As far as delivering images to a client, everybody's industry, everybody's subjects are different. We've all seen these videos before. We've all been in workshops. We've all been in meetings where we've seen people talk about how to do this. One thing I'll say is more often than not, when I see somebody do this type of demonstration, they're bringing a lot of bias for their particular industry into this technology. How do they find the best image? How do they deliver all of that other kind of stuff? I want to say that I have a very broad client base. There's times that I'm doing personal work, as this shoot was personal work. And then there's other times I'm shooting for headshots where I'm delivering maybe an image to somebody, or I'm delivering a series of images to an art director or a creative director. I don't think that there's a proper way to do this. I think there's just time-saving techniques in doing this and also some tricks that will help you out as we move forward. So that's declaration number one. Declaration number two is I really think that using the star rating system for your imagery is absolutely key to making this a little bit easier. I know that there's several different ways to use metadata to rate an image or categorize an image with some sort of easy to remember tag. You know, you have stars, as I've just mentioned. You have color tags. If you do Adobe Lightroom Classic, they also have a great feature called flagging, where you could come in and set the flag system here. I think it could be unflagged as it's brought in. You could flag an image, that's a pick, or you could reject an image. And that is actually great. I really like that in Adobe Lightroom Classic. The problem with at least that particular way of working is it only works in Adobe Lightroom Classic. It's not universal. I like to cross-pollinate. There's times that I'm doing things in one program or another program. I don't want to be limited by what one program does when I bring those images into another program. So I don't use flags. Color ratings, there's a lot of people who use them. The problem is you start to have to understand what a red image is or what an orange image is. Now, I do use color tags, but I don't use them for rating images. I use them for certain things. So for example, the blue tag in any program is if I make something black and white, I also tag it as blue. That way I could easily sort all of my black and white images by just viewing all of the blue color tags. For me, the star rating system is very clean. It's very simple because it has a hierarchy to it, right? 1 star is okay, but obviously 4 stars is better than 1 star. Now, what makes a 4-star image? What makes a 5-star image? That's completely and totally up to you. And we'll see that as we go through this. One thing I do want to say, especially in Capture One here, you'll see that I already have some 5-star images. Now, one thing that I do on shoots is I have a hotkey set up on my camera. So when I'm in playback mode, you could just hit a button and voila, that image is tagged with 5 stars. So if I have a client, if I have a model, if I have a subject looking at something and go, oh, that's fantastic, I will either have them press that button or I will press that button on the camera, because why do I want to have to remember what that is? Plus, it makes it easier when I'm conveying to a client or a subject, they're like, oh, what about the images that I really loved? I could be like, I'm actually showing you just the images that you really loved. I exported out only those for you to select from, or they're included in another folder so you can compare those. It makes it easier to do that. In this particular case, I was shooting tethered in Capture One, so I had the model look, and the model went ahead and hit 5 stars on some images that she liked. Now, the problem though is when you do turn people loose, they're going to hit that button a lot more than they should, but that's your job to go through and weed through those images and find the best of what they like as well. And what I'm about to show you is going to work either way. So with that being said, let's go ahead and dive into it. The first thing that I do, whether I'm in Capture One or I'm in Adobe Lightroom Classic, is I want to just look at the images individually. right? And I'm just going to do this really quick. Now, this individual pass, and I'll just start with this image. So there's something there, this warm-up image here. This is a way to kind of eliminate the absolute terrible from the okay to great. Now, as you can see with this particular image here, it's out of focus, but I don't even have to zoom in here. If I hop back in and I look at the thumbnail, you could kind of tell that it's out of focus, but it's hard to see that. Where if I'm looking at it in either loop view inside of Adobe Lightroom Classic, or I could hit the F key to go into full screen mode, I'm able to see, did flashes fire? Am I, relatively in focus, those kinds of things. This eliminates a lot of problems moving forward. Now in Capture One, if you want to do this, it's very similar. I'll scroll up to the top here. We'll start with our out of focus image. For Capture One, keyboard shortcut is Option F. So hold down Option F, that would be Alt F on PC Windows, and now you're in full screen mode. Now, the beauty of this is now you could use your arrow keys, and since I've started at the beginning, it's going to be the right arrow, and I could go through and I could just hit the right arrow key, and I could start to cycle through these images, and these were all light tests, as my model's being very patient here, and I can start to come into the actual shoot. Now, immediately, this image looks good. I could tell that this is a test image, the model's getting ready, but this image looks good. So I'm just going to hit the number 1, and that will rate it as 1 star. Now I'll hit Option F again in Capture One and actually hop out, and you could see here down below that there's a 1 star here. So when you're in full screen mode in Capture One, and also when you're in full screen mode inside of Adobe Lightroom Classic, you can do the ratings here. So if I hit the number 1 in Lightroom Classic, you'll actually see that 1, and I'm just hitting it repeatedly to come down here and show you that it's rating it as a 1 star. And you visually see that in Lightroom Classic. You don't see it in Capture One, unfortunately. But the nice thing about being in full screen mode is I can now isolate the images down and quickly go through and just kind of like, all right, that's good, that's bad. I can come through here and be like, okay, I like that, 1 star. I like that, 1 star. And all that I'm doing here is I'm just basically like, okay, I'm not worried about poses. I'm not worried about anything. I'm just like, is the model's eyes open? Are they connecting to camera? Did the strobes fire? That kind of thing. So for example, here, clearly this is not an image to move on. I'm catching the model in between a shot here. So that's 0 stars. And I'm just going through that, like here, that's clearly kind of eyes are closed, not a connection to the camera. So I don't rate that. I move on here. That's 1 star. That's 1 star, right? That's not, this is, right? And if I come back over to, say, Lightroom Classic, and I'll go ahead and hit F here and do the same thing and kind of come through and rate these. And by the way, I'm kind of rating these haphazardly. I'm more worried about the mechanics of this than I am the aesthetics of it. But I'm coming through here and I'm just doing a 1 star rating. Now, the benefit of doing this in either program is not only do you now have 1 stars, but you've also taken a little bit of a quicker look at the image. So you're not going to have as many out of focus. You're not going to have as many eyes closed. You're not going to have as many, oh, that strobe in the background didn't fire or something like that. So I go through in both programs, I do a full screen mode viewing, and I rate them as 1 stars. And by the way, if I haven't already said it, because I've said a lot already, the beauty of stars is also the keyboard shortcuts are universal. So when you're in these full screen modes, 0 is 0 stars, 1 is 1 star, 2 is 2 stars, 3 is 3 stars, 4 is 4 stars, and you guessed it, 5 is 5 stars. So it's another reason why I like the star rating system. I don't have to overthink it. And that seems to be almost universal in every raw converter. So that's also nice as well. So now that I have all of the 1 star images going on here, the next thing to do is to start to cull things down a little bit further. And this is where things can differ a little bit on methodology and also differ on what program that you're actually using. Before I do that, I'm just going to speed up the camera here and I'm just going to go through and I'm going to do a few more 1 star images so I have a little bit more. So through the power of editing, here we go. Okay, so through the power of editing, I've gone through in both programs and I've done 1 stars, and again, very haphazardly, but I don't have to be perfect on this. I'm just, again, eliminating the bad from the okay to great. In fact, I'm not looking for perfection here. Now, in Capture One, I could go to the filters panel and filter by 1 stars. If I'm in Lightroom Classic, I have the filter bar, which can be found down underneath view. / is the keyboard shortcut for that. And I can view by attribute here and say, well, view everything that's 1 star or greater. So now I'm looking at all of my 1 stars. So now the goal is to start to actually really trim away the okay from the better, right? And again, how you do this will differ depending on your methodology and your client delivery here. Now, both programs have some tricks to help you out with this. In the case of Lightroom Classic, where I'm going to start, I'm going to use something called Survey. And as mentioned before, I have a whole video on this, so I'm not going to go super deep into it. But first thing that I do is I hit the tab key just to get rid of the interface. Unfortunately, when I get into some of these modes inside of Lightroom Classic, I can't be in full screen mode. Survey is found underneath View on the menu bar. It's the letter N, and the way that I remember it is I can never remember that it's Survey, so that's how I remember it's the letter N. Now, the problem with Survey here is that I can't zoom in. If I hit the letter Z, it goes into Loop View, right? I hit the letter N, it takes me back to Survey. So the one problem with Survey that you have to keep in mind is the more thumbnails that you have, the less detail that you could see. And it's really about seeing detail here. So I'm going to hop back into the thumbnail view. I'm hitting the letter G on my keyboard. And I'm just going to select, say, maybe the first 4 images. And I'll come back into Survey. Now, the beauty of Survey here is I have these little X's in the bottom right-hand corners of each image. When I click on one of the X's, it will go ahead and remove that from the selection, and it will make the remaining images bigger, and I can start to focus on what I like and what I don't like. And when you're doing this, what you're actually looking for is you're looking for the images that don't look as good as the other images. You're removing, you're not remembering, right? It's easier to remove. It's easier to trim away than it is to be like, oh, well, that's gorgeous, right? So I'm just looking at the body posture here, and just like some of them maybe don't look good, and I'm going ahead and getting rid of them. And I think I had like 6 or 7 selected, maybe it was 5, and now I have 3 remaining. And so what I'm going to do here, I'll hop back into thumbnail or grid view, is these are selected, and I'm going to hit the number 2 on the keyboard. This is the next round of images to move on to it. Now, in the case of Capture One, it's kind of the same, but a little bit different. In fact, I used to love Lightroom over Capture One, but I've been working with Capture One more, and I found a few secrets. So first of all, I'm gonna actually select more images that I can inside of Adobe Lightroom Classic. I am going to go into full screen mode because I can inside of Capture One. And by the way, sometimes in Capture One, when you go into full screen mode, it will leave certain parts of the interface open. So Command T gets rid of all of kind of your tools and panels on that one side. And by the way, for those of you who are big Capture One users, I don't use the browser too much, which is over on the other side here, thumbnail view. I leave that alone. I like the thumbnail view here, so as a small side note. So I'll just get rid of the tools and the panels on the left-hand side, and now I'm left with this. So now if I double-click on any of these images, it brings them in. I'll go ahead and zoom out here, and I'll show you how to do that in a second. There's my browser. Turn that off, Command B. So now I see all of the images here. And actually, I'm going to come back in. I'm going to get out of this, and I'm going to select even more images here just to show you what happens when you have more images than Capture One can display. It doesn't make them smaller. It makes them a certain size, and then it will give you this and whatever, how many more images that you have. That's just fine. Now, I'm not in full screen mode because I have my toolbar up here so you can see the tools, although I'm going to give you keyboard shortcuts. So not only can you go into full screen mode, because I could, Option F, there we go, full screen. But you can also zoom in here, opposed to Lightroom Classic. So you have your magnify tool over here. The keyboard shortcut for that is Z to zoom in, zoom out. Pretty universal as well. But the secret here is to hold down the Shift key on your keyboard. That's Shift on Mac, Shift on Windows. And when you click on an image, it will zoom into all of the images here. So now I can see with a little bit more detail certain issues. Maybe it's subtlety in a pose. Maybe it's placement of a hand. Maybe it's shadow fall off, something like that. So I really like this in Capture One. Now to eliminate, you go to the arrow tool, or V as in Victor. And let's say I don't like this shot. So I'll hold down the Command key on Mac, Control key on Windows, and I'll just click on that thumbnail, and it will remove that thumbnail from the selection. Let's say I don't like that shot. Maybe say I don't like this shot. And again, I'm kind of being more on the mechanical side here than anything. Maybe I don't like that shot. These shots down here, I don't like that one. And as I'm doing this, what it's doing is that counter is dropping because I have more images to reveal or show. I'll get rid of maybe say this one. And now I have all of the remaining images. Now I'm just going to get rid of a few extra ones just to show you that just like Survey, it will scale things up at a certain point. So you can see the images a little bit bigger as you do this. Now, just like Lightroom, once you reach a certain point, you're going to probably apply another star rating. These are all 1 stars. And because I have edit selected here, chosen, so it's orange, if I hit the number 2 for any of these images, all of the images will be rated at number 2. right? And one thing that Capture One does that I'm not wild about is it doesn't take you back into thumbnail view. It just shows you the next image. So you do have to be aware of that. So that's a downside. So it has the next image here from the series actually selected. And if I reveal this, now I have 10 images for the number 2 or 2 stars. And from there, I can continue to go. The secret here is that you're always looking at a smaller and smaller group of images. You're refining that look. You're zooming in a little bit more. You're really choosing a particular pose. And again, it just depends on what industry that you're working in and what the client expectations are. For some cases, this is enough. You're sending it off to a client. They're going to choose. In other cases, it's your personal work. You're going to continue to refine from there. And so maybe you have a 3rd round or a 4th round, depending on how much variation in pose or maybe outfits that you have as you do this. That's where everybody's going to be a little bit different. But by using these 2 modes inside of either one of these programs, you're going to be able to further refine this, and using stars makes a lot more sense because it's easier to do with keyboard shortcuts, and it's also a little bit more universal, and it just also makes sense if you hand off images to somebody. Well, these are 2 stars, these are 3 stars. Clearly 3 stars should be better than 2 stars. Now, let's say that you're watching this and you're like, but I don't deliver to clients. I shoot personal work. I need to see the best shot of a particular series, and that's it. That's all that I'm going to edit. That's all that I'm going to print, or maybe that's all that I'm going to deliver. Lightroom Classic has one additional mode that Capture One does not have. And again, I've gone over this in my survey and compare video for Capture One, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. But what you do first is select your series of images. And unlike survey, you're not limited by the amount of images that you have, because when you have all of these images selected and you go up to view and you come down to compare, that has a very easy keyboard shortcut to remember. That is C for compare. When you do this, you're going to get 2 images. It's going to take the first image and make it a select, which I like to call the champion, and then it's going to have your candidate or your challenger on the right-hand side. Both images have little X's down in the bottom right-hand corner. Sorry, everything's popping up here so you can kind of see this. So you have X's here, and the beautiful thing is that you can zoom in if you wanted to. So you can do a little bit of a zoom in or a zoom out. You have a zoom control down here. Sorry, that keeps coming in. So you can zoom in and check detail here, unlike the survey mode. So that's a nice feature as well. Now, one thing that I've run into, and I don't know if it's a glitch with my current version of Lightroom Classic or not, but if you click the X for the candidate, what should happen is if you click the X for the select, what should happen is the candidate should jump over to the other side. And when I was testing this out earlier, that wasn't working, but it seems to be working now, which is interesting. So, but if it's not working for you, there's this little X to Y button down here that will move your candidate over to your select. Now, the beauty now is now you're just going to hit the X, and you're just going to use the X to essentially say, do I like what's on the left better than the right? If so, get rid of what's on the right. Right? If what I like better is on the left, I'll keep what's on the left. I'll get rid of what's on the right by hitting the X. If I like the image on the right, I will just use this button down here to shift it over, and then I can just continue to go through using the X down here in the bottom right-hand corner. So again, it wasn't working earlier, but now, nope, it's not. So yeah, it's certainly not. So I'm going to go and shift it over. It's a little bit odd. It was doing that, so I don't know if this is a glitch, but there you go. Hey, it's nice to know the workarounds if the glitches happen. So this X to Y will shift this over, and then again, you could just use the X. So at least for how Lightroom Classic's working right now, only use the X to remove for your candidate. If your candidate is, you want your candidate to be your new select, just go ahead and move it over here, and then just go ahead and click the X here, and that will take care of it. Now, the beauty of this is once you whittle this down, and I'm just going to go ahead and click all the X's here and just whittle this down. There we go. Once you reach the end, see how it's blinking here? Unfortunately, Lightroom doesn't notify you, that your select is a winner. And even worse, when you come into here, you will have both images selected. So you have to be like, this image is my winner, so I'll deselect this by Command or Control clicking on it, and then I'll make this 5 stars or whatever the heck you want to do. But Compare does give you that ability to just basically find the single best image, where with Capture One, it doesn't have that. I mean, you would just further refine and use the tricks that we already have, but there's no way to kind of do a left to right comparison inside of here. But you still have the ability to see thumbnails and whittle down, which now with those keyboard shortcuts inside of Capture One are great, that you could come in, you could jump in. By the way, if you need to move around in an image, hold down the space bar, continue to hold down the shift key, and you can move around all the images at the exact same time. That saves you a lot of hassle as well. The shift key just basically applies whatever you're doing to one image to all of the images when you're doing this inside of Capture One. Well, that wraps up culling images. Again, depending on the industry that you work in, how you're delivering stuff to clients, you're going to use these a little bit differently. Some of you are going to maybe have 0 stars, 1 stars, 5 stars. That's fine, right? Maybe you're only doing one pass on images. That's how it's going to work. Maybe you're not going to use survey mode at all. You're just going to use compare inside of Adobe Lightroom Classic. That's fantastic as well. Just know that there's several different approaches for this for your several different types of industries or clients or needs or passions that you're doing with your photography. You're not confined to one thing, but I do really believe that stars are a best or at least a better way to do your ratings here. I think it's better than color labels, and it's certainly better than flags because it's not as proprietary, and you have a little bit more universality going on, especially if you're going to hop between programs as I've done here. So hopefully you've liked this video. If so, please hit the like button. Thanks for making it this far, by the way. If you haven't already done so, subscribe to the channel. Please share this with your fellow photographers or digital techs. Maybe this will help them out as well. And also leave a comment down in the field below. Let me know what secret you're using. Do you have a secret recipe? Is there something I'm not doing I should be doing? It's always a great way to learn, sharing information. And until next time, this is MD Welch wishing you all the best from this very all digital version of PhotoKitchen.